It happened during the final photo of the night, the one Camille had been planning in her head for weeks. The rented rooftop sparkled with string lights and gold-accented decor. A curated playlist hummed through the speakers, and guests posed in designer outfits under the soft flash of professional photographers she'd hired. I was standing beside her, one arm lightly at her back, smiling like I'd rehearsed it. That's when she turned toward me, not with love, not even with annoyance, but disgust. Her voice cut through the air, sharp and cold. "Move out of the picture. Your face is ruining the aesthetic." There was laughter, uncomfortable shuffling. Someone muttered, "Damn." I didn't say anything. I didn't ask if she was joking. I didn't even blink. I just stepped aside and out of the frame. That was the moment I knew I was done. Not because it was the first time she humiliated me. It wasn't. But because I realized I no longer felt shocked by it. 14 years of marriage. And I didn't even flinch. I walked to the party like a ghost, past her friends with their forced smiles and perfect hair. Past the table of catered food, she insisted on labeling with handwritten calligraphy cards. No one stopped me. I took the elevator down alone, feeling the bass of the music fade above me like it belonged to a life I no longer recognized. By the time I reached the car, I wasn't angry, just numb. The truth is, I'd already been planning to leave. Quietly, carefully. I'd been sleeping in the guest room for months. My name was already removed from a few shared accounts. I'd been copying files, taking pictures of important documents, slowly pulling myself out of the web we'd tangled ourselves into over the years. Her insult wasn't the beginning of the end. It was a final confirmation that I was making the right decision. That night, while I sat on a hotel bed, watching a muted rerun of some cooking show, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Camille's best friend, Danny. "She's still crying." I stared at the screen for a long time, not because I felt guilty, but because I felt nothing at all. My name is Marcus Whitaker. I'm 42, founder of a real estate development firm that I built from the ground up, long nights, failed pitches, clawing my way into boardrooms where no one knew my name until I made sure they never forgot it. I'm not flashy. I wear the same kind of suit I did 10 years ago, just better tailored now. I drive a reliable car, not a loud one. My watch tells time. That's all I've ever needed it to do. Camille was the opposite. She's 39, a creative director at some lifestyle agency that only hired people who look like they were airbrushed in real life. She knew angles, filters, aesthetics. Everything had to be beautiful, polished, staged. Even our dog had an Instagram account with a color-coded feed and brand partnerships. At first, I thought it was impressive. I was proud of her, even she knew how to sell a moment. We made a good team. Me, the quiet force building something solid, and her, the public face that made it all look effortless. We didn't have kids. She said they would derail her trajectory, and I didn't push. I told myself I understood, that I supported her, but in truth, I think I just got used to saying yes. Somewhere along the line, our marriage stopped being a partnership. I became a fixture in a home that looked like it belonged in a magazine, but never felt lived in. She'd rearrange throw pillows I'd leaned against. She once scolded me for leaving a half-empty water bottle on the kitchen counter because it ruined the visual flow. We had dinners where our food got cold because she needed 20 photos from 5 angles. Birthdays turned into content shoots. Vacations were about location tags. Conversations started sounding like captions. I began to notice I didn't really exist in her world unless I matched her aesthetic. There was a moment, about a year ago, when I walked into our living room, her shoot set for some collaboration, and she asked me to change my shirt because the color clashed with the couch. She said it like she was asking me to pick up milk on the way home. That should have been the moment, but I let it slide like I always did, because what was the point? I told myself it was harmless, surface level, not worth making waves. But it builds the quiet dismissal of who you are. The 1,000 little ways someone shows you they'd rather you be a background prop than a person. That night on the rooftop, when she looked me dead in the eye and told me to move because my face ruined the aesthetic, that wasn't an isolated insult. That was the mask slipping. That was what she'd been thinking for years, but finally said out loud because the performance mattered more than the person beside her. And the worst part? I didn't even react. I just walked away because I'd already realized long before that moment. I wasn't her husband anymore. I was part of the brand, and I was done being invisible. It was a Tuesday in April, and I remember that because Tuesdays were always travel days for me, routine and forgettable. But that day stuck. I was supposed to be in Portland until Wednesday, but a client rescheduled last minute. So I hopped on the next flight home, without telling Camille. I figured I'd surprise her, maybe grab dinner, do something spontaneous for once. When I pulled into the driveway and saw her car parked there, I thought she might have taken a personal day. The house was dark, too quiet, and something about that silence didn't sit right. I walked in, set my bag down quietly, and called her name. Nothing. I moved down the hallway and noticed a light from under the office door. That room was always mine. She never touched it, barely glanced inside. I opened the door and saw her sitting at my desk, eyes wide, mouth slightly open, scrambling to close out tabs on my personal desktop, like a teenager caught watching something she shouldn't. She stood up quickly, smoothing her dress, trying to compose herself. I needed to pull a file for work, she said without meeting my eyes. It was a bad lie. Camille's entire life was on her MacBook, always within arm's reach. She had no reason to touch my system. I walked past her and sat at the desk, scrolling through the browser history before she could clear it. She didn't even try to stop me. She just stood there with her arms crossed, waiting. My chest tightened as I read through the tabs. Private banking portals, investment logins, statements going back over a decade. Not one file for work. She'd been combing through everything. My retirement accounts, savings, even my email threads with my financial advisor. I asked her, plainly why. No yelling, no accusations. Just a question I already knew the answer to. Because you've been hiding money from me, she said flatly, like I'd committed some betrayal by having something that wasn't curated and color-coded into her vision of our life. I didn't say anything right away. I just looked at her. The money she found, just over $500,000, wasn't secret in the way she made it sound. I'd built it slowly, carefully, over 22 years, long before we were married, before we even met. Bonuses, consulting fees, side projects I never talked about because they weren't flashy or interesting. I kept it in a separate account because it was mine, untouched by our shared expenses or Camille's constant need to upgrade every corner of our lives. I hadn't even dipped into it during the pandemic, when things got tight. She didn't care about where it came from. She cared that I hadn't told her. That could have changed everything, she said. I could have launched my own agency by now. You knew I needed capital. Her voice trembled, not from emotion, but rage. She saw the money as something I withheld from her personally, like I was punishing her for dreaming bigger. She demanded I transfer it to her, all of it, said it was the least I could do after keeping her in the dark. I told her no. Calm, direct, final. It wasn't hers to demand. And in that moment, something between us broke. It was like the temperature in the room dropped. Her expression hardened into something cold and sharp. She didn't cry. She didn't argue. She just walked out of the room, out of the house, and didn't come back until after midnight. We never spoke about it again. But from that day forward, something changed behind her eyes. Every smile a little tighter. Every compliment edged with something bitter. I stopped leaving my devices unlocked. I started watching her the way she had always watched me. And for the first time, I started planning my exit. After I caught Camille in my office, digging through my private financials, something in me switched. Whatever trust remained between us was gone. I didn't explode. I didn't start fights. Instead, I got quiet. I watched. I took notes. Her patterns changed almost immediately. Her phone, which used to be an open extension of her hand, started staying face down on every surface. She changed her passcode, then changed it again. She started carrying her laptop with her from room to room, even into the bathroom. There was always an excuse: client emails, quick edits, deadlines. But her stories got sloppy. She'd leave at 6 p.m. for a presentation with a startup brand she never mentioned before, dressed like she was going to gallery opening, not a pitch meeting. She started wearing perfume again. Not the kind she wore when we first met, something subtle and floral, but a new one, something sharper, muskier, more expensive. And she started coming home with a different scent clinging to her. Cologne, warm and masculine, not mine. I didn't need to be told. I already knew, but I needed to see it. I needed confirmation, not for closure, but for clarity. It was Joel, my business partner, who gave me the first real proof. We were grabbing drinks one night, something we rarely did anymore, when he told me he'd seen Camille 2 nights earlier at Delano's, one of those sleek, low-lit steakhouses where executives go to close deals they don't want on paper. She wasn't alone. She was a man Joel recognized, Evan Cole, the CEO of a high-end marketing agency that made its name building luxury identities for wealthy clients. The same agency Camille used to name drop every time she talked about her dream career move. Joel didn't want to stir anything, but he couldn't ignore what he saw. He took a photo. Nothing scandalous on its face, just the two of them sitting side by side in a curved leather booth. But their posture told the story. Her hand was on his wrist, their heads tilted close, bodies angled inward, like no one else in the restaurant existed. She wasn't pitching a brand strategy. She was already living it. Evan was everything Camille seemed to crave lately. Flashy, hyperconnected, dripping with curated charm. The kind of man who could offer her not just attention, but access. I didn't confront her. I didn't ask questions. I already knew what she'd say or how she'd spin it. I wasn't interested in hearing lies softened with fake guilt. I wanted facts. I wanted leverage. So I hired a private investigator. He was methodical, quiet, professional. Over the next few weeks, he built the timeline I didn't want but needed. Camille wasn't just emotionally gone. She was actively laying the groundwork for her next chapter, one that didn't include me, one that, if she had her way, would be funded by the assets I'd worked my entire adult life to build. Rachel didn't waste time. From the moment I handed her Camille's name, routine, and a few photos, she moved like someone who'd done this 100 times before. Within days, she was sending me time-stamped images, location logs, receipts, and the kind of detail that made my stomach turn. Hotel meetups were frequent, never the same place twice, always discreet, always during times Camille told me she was stuck in meetings or at work dinners. She wasn't working. She was lying in someone else's bed while I paid the mortgage on the house. She returned to with practiced indifference. There were photos of her wrapped in a designer trench coat I didn't recognize, stepping out of Evan Cole's penthouse just after 6 a.m., sunglasses on, hair freshly blown out. The timestamps didn't lie. She hadn't even made it back home before I left for the office those mornings. I'd kissed her on the cheek while she was still half asleep in bed, not realizing she'd already been somewhere else, already with someone else. Rachel dug into the financial trail, too. Evan wasn't just sleeping with Camille. He was funding the image she wanted to project. Credit card records showed he paid for 3 separate high-end shopping sprees at boutiques she'd never have visited with me. Her new party dress, her shoes, even photographer for her rooftop birthday party, all came from Evan's Amex. I was footing the bill for the venue, the food, the drinks, and she let another man cover her image, knowing full well I'd be standing there like a fool in the middle of it all. The affair had started 6 months earlier, just weeks after Camille first accused me of hiding money. She had already decided I wasn't enough. She wanted Evan's status, his network, his promise of power. Rachel's report confirmed it. Camille had been planning her exit, timing it perfectly around a VP role Evan supposedly dangled in front of her, a role she believed would elevate her into the world she thought she deserved. But there was one detail Camille hadn't accounted for. Evan was still married, happily, from what Rachel uncovered. His wife, a corporate attorney named Denise, had no idea. Evan wasn't planning to leave her. He'd never even mentioned divorce to Camille. In texts Rachel recovered, screenshots I could barely read without laughing, Camille was pushing, hinting at our future, referencing timelines, asking when he would finalize things. Evan kept stalling, dodging, smiling his way out of commitment. Camille had built her entire fantasy life around a man who saw her as entertainment, not a partner. She bet everything on him. Her pride, her marriage, her next move, and lost. And I, for the first time in months, held all the pieces. I filed for divorce the very next morning. While Camille was still probably sipping oat milk lattes and scrolling through birthday comments, I was at my attorney's office, signing the paperwork that would officially end our marriage. We had everything ready. Prenup reviewed, PI report printed and indexed, timeline laid out to the hour. We weren't just filing. We were going for the jugular. The papers were served that same afternoon, hand-delivered by a courier straight to Camille's agency during a full team meeting. Her assistant watched it happen. The envelope landed in front of her, sealed, official, undeniable. She opened it, and for the first time in years, Camille didn't control the narrative. I wasn't there, but I didn't need to be. The report started trickling, and almost immediately, the room went silent. She got up and walked out, without a word. Within 2 hours, I had 64 missed calls. I didn't answer a single one. I blocked her number and her backup number. I blocked her from email, from Instagram, from the joint calendar she insisted we use for communication clarity. There was nothing left to clarify. Her lawyer came at me with everything they could throw, claims that she provided emotional labor that went beyond the scope of our prenup, accusations that I had been controlling, distant, and intentionally sabotaged her career trajectory. by withholding my savings. It was laughable. My attorney responded with precision. He dropped the full affair dossier on the negotiation table like a bomb. Printed photos, time-stamped GPS logs, credit card receipts, hotel footage screenshots, and transcribed messages that left no room for interpretation. The room went quiet then, too. They stopped talking about alimony after that. She ended up with the Lexus and half the furniture, which I honestly didn't care about. Take the sectional. Take the bed you spent 6 months crawling out of before going to Evan's place. I kept everything else. The house, the accounts, the retirement fund, the dog. No support, no further claims, no public fight. Just one final condition, one that wasn't negotiable. She had to post a public admission, not to make myself feel better, not out of spite, but because Camille had spent years cultivating a lie. She built a brand on polished deception. She made me into a background character in her self-made lifestyle fairy tale. So I made her own up to the reality she tried to hide. 3 days later, it went live. A single white square on her Instagram grid. Caption in Helvetica Neue, "I betrayed my husband. This is my fault." No photo, no story attached. Comments disabled within 4 hours. But not before a few people saw it. Screenshots spread quietly. Mutual friends stopped reaching out. Brand partners distanced themselves. That post didn't just end the marriage. It ended the performance. Once the post went up, everything began to unravel with a speed even I didn't expect. Evan disappeared almost immediately. No farewell, no explanation, no attempt at softening the blow. Just silence. Rachel later confirmed that he and his wife had quietly reconciled months earlier and had recently renewed their vows at some vineyard in Napa, complete with family-only ceremony and matching watches posted on her private Instagram. Camille wasn't just discarded. She had been a placeholder, a fantasy, and when Evan was done, he erased her like a draft that no longer fit his image. The fallout was swift. Within a week, Camille was called into her agency's office under the guise of a brand realignment meeting. The truth was simpler. They didn't want her drama bleeding into their polished campaigns. Lifestyle clients backed out. A few influencer collaborations were quietly severed. Her name, once whispered in high-end circles as a tastemaker, now came with a pause and a lowered voice. She lost her job that day. No goodbye lunch, no post on the agency feed, just a signed exit letter and a locked company account. Her online following collapsed next. 1 minute, she was posting curated flat lays and sponsored skincare routines. The next, her follower count bled out like a severed artery. The algorithm didn't care about redemption arcs, and neither did the brands. Without Evan funding her image, without the agency propping her up, she was just another account with too many filters and not enough truth. 80% gone in under 2 weeks. Collaborations dried up. Affiliate codes stopped working. Her once perfect life had no audience left. She moved back in with her mother, the same house in Pasadena she once called suffocating. She tried to stay quiet online, but the damage had already spread beyond repair. Most people forgot quickly, but the ones that mattered remembered. A few weeks later, she asked to meet. I agreed, not out of sympathy, but because curiosity lingered like static. We met at a neutral spot, a coffee shop with no significance. She was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table that used to be her favorite spot for candid laptop shots. But there was no laptop now, no makeup, no jewelry, no manicured nails, just thrift store jeans, a plain t-shirt, and tired eyes. She looked up at me like she didn't know who I was. "Do you hate me?" she asked after a long silence, fingers wrapped around a chipped ceramic mug. Her voice was small, not staged, not rehearsed. I didn't answer at first. I just watched her. Everything she'd built, all the effort, the angles, the poses, it was gone. She wasn't the version of Camille I'd married, or the version she had become. She was just emptied out. "No," I finally said, "I don't hate you." And I didn't. I didn't feel anything at all. No warmth, no bitterness, no satisfaction. Just a quiet absence of weight. That was when I realized what had changed. I had finally become invisible to her. Exactly what she had always wanted me to be. The only difference was, now it was on my terms. 6 months after the divorce, I was living in a modest condo on the edge of downtown. It wasn't large. It didn't have marble countertops or curated furniture sets, and not a single item in my kitchen matched. But it was quiet. It was clean. It was mine. Every square foot felt earned. No one commented on how the light hit the wall, or if the throw blanket complemented the couch. I didn't have to tiptoe around someone's curated illusion of perfection. I could breathe. The first morning I woke up there without checking my phone for Camille's calendar invites or passive-aggressive texts about forgetting to fluff the couch pillows. I made coffee in a chip mug I picked up from a roadside diner during a trip years ago. It didn't match anything. That's what I loved about it. I stood barefoot on the cold tile, drinking black coffee, watching the city start to move outside my window, and for the first time in years, I felt like I was actually inside my life, fully present, not just existing in the wings of someone else's production. I started dating again, slowly, without pressure, not to replace anyone, not to prove anything, just to remember what it felt like to be seen for who I was, not for how I photographed next to someone. I laughed again, not the polite kind of gallery openings or brand mixers, but real, sudden laughter that surprised me, because it had been missing for so long I'd forgotten how it sounded coming from my own mouth. I reconnected with friends I hadn't seen in years, people I'd unintentionally pushed aside while trying to keep up with Camille's expectations. One night, I came across a group photo from that rooftop party, the one where she told me to move because I ruined the aesthetic. Someone had tagged me before I deactivated the shared album. I stared at it for a long time. The lighting was perfect, the backdrop elegant, the smiles frozen just right, but all I could see was how staged it looked, how none of it felt real. And then I realized that being pushed out of that picture was the best thing Camille ever did for me. She thought she was humiliating me. What she really did was set me free. I learned that love isn't supposed to be a performance. It's not supposed to be edited, color-corrected, or filtered for approval. It's messy. It's honest. It's knowing that someone sees you exactly as you are and doesn't ask you to shrink, soften, or disappear to fit a frame. That birthday party didn't mark the end of something. It marked the beginning. The moment I stopped being a prop and reclaimed my place in my own story. My name is Marcus Whitaker, and I never looked better outside her frame.